There is a brutal, undeniable reality about Caitlin Clark's second season in Indiana that the entire basketball establishment is desperately trying to bury beneath body language narratives and coaching platitudes. Stephanie White and Kelsey Mitchell are actively sabotaging the most marketable player in women's basketball history, and the front office is sitting in total silence while it happens. For months now, Caitlin Clark has been forced to navigate an absolute disaster of her roster construction, absorbing public criticism for turnovers and shot selection while her teammates go scoreless for entire halves and play defense like they are afraid of contact. But the conversation that just exploded across sports media this week ripped the mask off completely. Caitlin Clark is being blamed for organizational failure, and the people responsible are hiding behind her mistakes. Welcome back. This is Hoops Decoded, and today we are documenting the moment the Indiana Fever's dysfunction became impossible to ignore and exposing exactly who is profiting from Caitlin Clark's public flogging. Before we walk you through the third quarter collapse that set this entire firestorm off, I need you to understand the context that the national media has deliberately skipped over. Caitlin Clark came into this season as a first-team All-WNBA selection. She is on pace to make it again this year. She has played the equivalent of less than 2 full professional seasons, and she is already being held to a standard that veterans with a decade of experience cannot meet. And the Indiana Fever, the organization that won the draft lottery and secured the rights to the most transformational talent the league has seen in 20 years, built her exactly zero infrastructure to succeed. Kelsey Mitchell went scoreless the entire second half of the game everyone is dissecting. Scoreless. The entire second half. Kelsey Mitchell, whose singular role on this roster is to get buckets, could not buy a basket when the game was on the line, and yet the film breakdowns circulating right now are focused entirely on Caitlin Clark's turnovers in the third quarter. Let me say that again so it sinks in. The designated scorer for the Indiana Fever did not score a single point in the second half, and the rookie point guard is the one being called selfish and careless on national television. This is not basketball analysis. This is a cover-up. Let me walk you through what actually happened in that third quarter because the tape tells a story that Stephanie White does not want you to see. Caitlin Clark came out hot. She was on her way to another 30-point double-double. She was cooking and then the turnovers started piling up. Some of them were bad. I am not here to make excuses for unnecessary passes or careless decisions, but I am also not going to allow the narrative to stop there because the film shows something else entirely. 19 seconds into the shot clock, nobody on the Indiana Fever had touched the basketball except Caitlin Clark. 19 seconds. They were down 9 points, and she brought the ball up and jacked an open three. The criticism from the commentary was immediate. You cannot do that with professional players out there. You cannot do that with bucket getters like Kelsey Mitchell on the floor. This is what frustrates your teammates. But here's the part that nobody wants to talk about. Those shots, the ones Caitlin Clark took at Iowa with 15 seconds left on the clock and nobody else touching the ball, were not a problem in college because she made them. She made them at a high enough rate that it was worth the risk. And in college, she did not have Kelsey Mitchell standing in the corner. She did not have Aliyah Boston in the paint. She did not have Sophie Cunningham shooting the ball better than almost anyone in the league right now. She had 4 teammates who deferred to her completely and a coaching staff that built an entire offensive system around her decision-making. Stephanie White is asking Caitlin Clark to become a different player overnight. And when Caitlin Clark resists, when her body language on the bench shows frustration, when she rolls her eyes or shrugs her shoulders after a coaching conversation, Stephanie White and the rest of the establishment act like she is poisoning the locker room. Let me be entirely clear with you. Caitlin Clark's body language is a problem. It is unprofessional. It undermines the coach in front of the entire team and it gives referees an excuse to tighten the whistle on her. I am not defending it, but I am asking you to sit with this question for a second. What kind of work environment produces that body language from a player who spent her entire college career being coachable, being beloved by her teammates, and being celebrated as a leader? The answer is a toxic one. The Indiana Fever failed Caitlin Clark from day one. General Manager Amber Cox assembled a roster that cannot defend, cannot shoot consistently, and cannot beat good teams. They can beat up on the scrubs of the league and even then they struggle. They cannot beat the Atlanta Dream. They cannot beat the Minnesota Lynx. They cannot beat the Las Vegas Aces. And when they lose to those teams, the blame falls on the 22-year-old point guard who is being asked to do everything. Kelsey Mitchell is getting blown by on defense possession after possession. Aliyah Boston is missing layups at the rim time and time again. The entire team is switching on screens incorrectly, going over the top when they should go under, leaving shooters wide open in transition. And Caitlin Clark is the one being called out in film sessions for shooting turnovers. You know what a shooting turnover is? It is when you take a contested shot with 15 seconds left on the shot clock. Nobody else has touched the ball and the defense runs it back the other way before you can set up. Coaches hate those shots because they are low percentage and they lead to transition buckets. But here is the thing. Michael Jordan took those shots. Kobe Bryant took those shots. And when they went in, nobody said a word. When they did not go in, the conversation was about shot selection, not about being uncoachable. Caitlin Clark is being held to a standard that her teammates are not, and the reason is simple. Caitlin Clark is the face of the league. Kelsey Mitchell is not. Kelsey Mitchell's role is to get buckets, And when she fails to do that for an entire half, the media does not care. Nobody cared what Kelsey Mitchell was doing before Caitlin Clark arrived in Indiana, and they still do not care when she jacks up contested shots after dribbling 10 times in isolation. The same film breakdowns that are being used to crucify Caitlin Clark could be cut for Kelsey Mitchell. They could be cut for Aliyah Boston. But they are not. Because those players do not sell tickets. Let me tell you what this reminds me of. Allen Iverson and Larry Brown, two strong personalities, two completely different philosophies about how basketball should be played, and a front office that refused to pick a side. Allen Iverson played a certain way his entire life. High school, college, his early NBA years. He was the guy. He took the shots. He made the plays. And when Larry Brown tried to coach him into being a traditional point guard, Iverson resisted. They clashed. They fought. And eventually they reached a compromise, but only because the president of the 76ers, Pat Krause, stepped in and forced both of them to make it work. Krause told Larry Brown, "We are not trading him." Krause told Allen Iverson, "You are going to listen to this coach." And because somebody with authority intervened, they made it to the finals. The Indiana Fever does not have a Pat Krause. They do not have anyone in the front office or the coaching staff with the spine to step in and say, "This ends now. We are building around Caitlin Clark and everyone else is going to adjust." Or, "Caitlin Clark, you are going to play within this system, and if you cannot, you will sit." Nobody is making that call, and so the dysfunction metastasizes. Here is what makes this even worse. Stephanie White debuted her custom-made signature sneakers on the same day as Caitlin Clark's massive Nike reveal. The same day. The head coach of the Indiana Fever, whose job is to develop and support the franchise player, chose to compete with her for attention on one of the biggest marketing days of Caitlin Clark's career. That is not leadership. That is ego. That is insecurity. And it tells you everything you need to know about the power dynamics in that locker room. Caitlin Clark hates her work environment. You can see it in her body language. You can see it in the way she interacts with Stephanie White on the sideline. And when a star player hates their work environment, it affects everything. It affects their effort on defense. It affects their decision-making on offense. It affects the way they treat their teammates. We have all been in jobs we hated, and we know what it does to performance. But here is the part that nobody wants to say out loud. Caitlin Clark is not the only one with bad body language. Caitlin Clark is not the only one making bad decisions. Caitlin Clark is just the only one being held accountable for it on national television. Let me give you a specific example. In the third quarter of a competitive game, Caitlin Clark hit a layup at the rim. 4-point game. The Fever came back down on defense. And the opponent's best shooter, we will call her Pow Pow, pulled up for an open three. Caitlin Clark was guarding her, and the defensive effort was appalling. Flat-footed, no closeout, no hand-up. Just standing there watching the shot go up. That is unacceptable in a 4-point game in the third quarter. That is effort. That is not talent. That is not size. That is a choice. And you know what the coaching staff told Caitlin Clark in the scouting report? Get up on Pow Pow. Do not give her any space. If there is a ball screen, go over the top. She is a shooter. You cannot play her back, and Caitlin Clark ignored it. She freelanced. She played lazy defense, and it cost the team points. That is on her. I am not excusing it, but I am also not going to pretend that she is the only one on the Indiana Fever playing bad defense. The entire team is bad defensively. Jordan Canada is getting to the rim at will. Opponents are switching and attacking mismatches every single possession. The Fever cannot guard anyone. And when the entire team is failing, singling out one player is not coaching. It is scapegoating. Here is what the establishment does not want you to think about. Caitlin Clark played at Iowa. She did not play at UConn under Gino Auriemma, where that body language would have been coached out of her before the season started. She did not play at South Carolina under Dawn Staley, where showing up your coach in front of the team would get you benched immediately. She played in a program that let her be the class clown. She was an A- student who could have been an A+ student if someone had just gotten the clown out of her. But nobody did. And now, in year 2 of her professional career, the Indiana Fever is trying to do it, and they do not have the infrastructure, the coaching staff, or the locker room culture to make it work. You want to know what Caitlin Clark needs? She needs teammates who will hold her accountable. She needs a veteran presence in the locker room who will pull her aside after a bad possession and say, "Do not do that again." She needs a coaching staff that will correct her in a way that she can actually hear. And she needs a front office that will build a roster around her strengths instead of asking her to compensate for everyone else's weaknesses. Angel Reese would not let Caitlin Clark get away with this. If Angel Reese were on the Indiana Fever, she would call Caitlin Clark out in the film session. She would say, "You cannot show up the coach like that. You cannot roll your eyes on the bench. You are hurting the team." And Caitlin Clark would listen. Because it would be coming from a peer, not from a coach she does not respect or a front office that has failed her. But the Indiana Fever does not have an Angel Reese. They do not have anyone with the cash or the courage to hold Caitlin Clark accountable, and so the dysfunction continues. Let me tell you what is going to happen. The Indiana Fever is going to keep losing to good teams. They are going to keep beating up on bad teams. Caitlin Clark is going to keep putting up stats, and the media is going to keep blaming her for the losses. Stephanie White is going to keep pointing at shot selection and body language, and the front office is going to keep hiding. And eventually something is going to break. Either Stephanie White is gone, or Kelsey Mitchell is traded, or Caitlin Clark demands out. One of those three things is going to happen because this situation is unfixable. The relationship between Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White is beyond repair. The roster construction is a disaster. The locker room culture is toxic, and the front office does not have the courage to blow it up and start over. I am going to put my name on this. If the Indiana Fever do not make a significant roster or coaching change before the end of this season, Caitlin Clark will request a trade within the next 12 months. And if I am wrong, come back to this video and roast me in the comments. But I am not wrong. The pattern is too clear. The numbers are too obvious. Stephanie White is protecting her own reputation at Caitlin Clark's expense. Kelsey Mitchell is getting a pass because she is not the face of the league. And Caitlin Clark is being set up to fail. The only question is whether the Indiana Fever will admit it before it is too late. Here's what I want from you in the comments. Forced choice. Is Caitlin Clark uncoachable, or is the Indiana Fever's coaching staff and front office failing her? Pick one. Defend it in one line. I want to see where this audience stands because the national conversation is pretending this is a one-sided issue, and it is not. Hit the notification bell because this story is not over. The Indiana Fever's next loss is going to reignite this entire debate, and when it does, we will be here to break down exactly what the establishment is trying to hide. We will see you in the next video.